I know that the slap has been covered ad nauseum and memed into oblivion, and I'm not really here to beat that into a paste, but the good folks over at Now This News have created an opinion video that is out of touch, to say the very least, because a situation concerning 3 black people, or I guess 4, if you count young August, is of course the fault of white people. And I think she's serious about this. Now, luckily, you can read some of the comments over at the Now This News Instagram page, and people aren't really buying it. She is reaching. Can we all agree to just stop talking about this, please? Sounds like she's gaslighting Chris Rock. What a reach. People are soft nowadays. So that's a little bit of a silver lining on this situation, but let's see what this woman has to say about the slap heard around the world.
For folks not to understand that this is a black woman's issue and that this is a form of sexism and racism towards black women, it is telling of white supremacy in our society.
Okay, so it takes her 13 seconds to blame the entire situation on white supremacy, even though Chris Rock, Jada Pinkett, and Will Smith, and of course, August Alsina are all black, and they're also rich and famous. They're at the Oscars, so I don't know how this has anything to do with white supremacy, but whatever, just call it anything, throw it at the wall, see if it sticks. And fortunately, I don't really think this line is sticking, and I don't know who this woman is. Ola Ojewumi, disability rights activist / founder and director of Project Ascend. So that sounds like another money laundering scheme a la BLM, but I'll move on.
And an unwillingness to see the humanities and struggles of black women when it comes to hair and being accepted in predominantly white spaces. When we talk about violence, we rarely talk about emotional violence or gaslighting.
Emotional violence or gaslighting. Interesting. I don't think I've ever experienced it. I don't think anybody's ever done that to us, especially not in the past 2 or 3 years. Haven't seen it at all. So explain to me what gaslighting is, lady.
And black women are being gaslit when they're saying, hey, this is a problem within our community, an example of misogynoir targeting black women.
Okay, and misogynoir, of course, that's the new buzzword. We've never heard it before a week or 2 ago, and now it's everywhere, and we're all just supposed to pretend that it means something as if it wasn't made up 2 weeks ago. So I don't really know what misogynoir is, but that's what these people do. They create new terms. So it's either going to be a brand new term that doesn't mean anything, it's completely made up, or they're going to completely change the definition of existing words to further their political agenda, which oftentimes is incredibly creepy.
If you're a black woman, your hair will always be seen as political.
No, that's you. You're the one doing it. Literally nobody else is saying that your hair is political. You made that up.
Even those of us black women that don't sit on the national stage, that aren't well known, our stories matter. This stuff happens to us every day in our offices, during Zoom meetings, even when we're just trying to socialize and live life.
That's just not true. You are putting way too much on it. Honestly, if you're just a nice, cool person and you want to go out to happy hour after work, if you're not too scared to leave your house because Rona is still here, even though we kind of threw that to the side and went on to this World War III thing, but whatever. You're the one making it a big deal. Nobody else cares. I can pretty much promise you that. Do you really think that somebody's going to say, well, I would go out to the bar with you after work, or I would go grab a cup of coffee with you or grab lunch with you, but I just don't really like the way your hair looks right now, so I'm going to have to pass. It doesn't happen. It doesn't make sense, but how else are you going to get a victim card when you are basically, I don't want to say Jada's at fault, but there is some creepy things going on here, and I'm not going to rehash the, intricacies of Will and Jada and August and Chris Rock's relationship, but it's clear to me that this woman is creating this victimhood, but of course that makes sense. That's what they do with literally everything.
If there was a white woman who had lost her hair to a medical condition, there is no comedian that would get on stage and make a joke of it. Comedy has boundaries.
Okay, so first of all, I don't know how we can be sure that nobody has ever made fun of a white woman dealing with a medical issue. I don't think you can prove that. Secondly, Chris Rock is black. So do you think that he hates Jada Pinkett because he doesn't, they basically have the same haircut? He's a comedian. It was a joke, but now it's somehow equivalent to violence. This is absolute insanity. And it's funny because I think they genuinely believe this stuff. I don't know if she knows that this is a weird form of political gaslighting and just race baiting, or if she actually believes it. And that's the question I ask myself almost every day. Is it evil or is it stupidity? And I guess I'll never know.
There are certain topics comedians know that they cannot touch. For example,
That's just not true. Nothing's off limits. That's the point of comedy. It's just not true. You might not want them to talk about it because you get offended at, the lightest little joke about G.I. Jane, but that's never been off topic. You can literally joke about anything. You can ask Anthony Jeselnik or Joe Rogan or a handful of comedians that nothing is off limits. That's the entire point of comedy.
were a number of deaf performers on the Oscars, and there was Liza Minnelli who was using a wheelchair. Would it be socially acceptable to joke about their disabilities?
Okay, and also, I think we can agree that Chris Rock genuinely didn't know that she has alopecia, as if it would matter. It really wouldn't matter at all, but I don't think Chris Rock is stalking Jada's Twitter and Instagram feed to keep up with all her, doctor's appointments. So this point is completely moot, right? He doesn't know that she has a disability. He thinks it's a hairstyle. And it was, look, was the joke hilarious? Absolutely not. It was seemed like a throwaway. I don't think it was written. Maybe it was. And if it was written, did he even write it? Was it written by one of the writers at the Oscars? Who knows? But she is trying to equate his joke about G.I. Jane to joking about a lady who's visibly in a wheelchair or who is deaf. It's just not the same. It's apples and oranges. But that's what these people do. Again, they jump to conclusions and ignore all reality.
Which is more visible as opposed to Jada's medical condition. I think Black women and people with disabilities are often the butt of jokes, and it's socially acceptable. One of the things
that's, again, not true. Quite literally, the only people that you can't joke about are Black people. And you can barely get away with it if you are Black. But in this case, Chris Rock doesn't get away with it, even though he got slapped in the face and is clearly the quote unquote victim in the situation.
Things that I've seen on Twitter is that people denying Jada Pinkett Smith's illness as a valid disability and being very dismissive of her humanity and focusing so much on will and the action of slapping someone than the actual violence of critiquing a Black woman's hair.
Okay, so she's literally saying that Chris Rock's joke is violence while Will Smith smacking Chris Rock is not violence. Do we understand how completely absurd this is? So a joke made by a comedian who doesn't know the history of this woman is more harmful than that woman's cuckold husband smacking the man who made the joke. Just let that sink in, I suppose.
Prominent Black woman's hair on a global stage in a predominantly white audience. As a person who lived with a hidden disability for years, I know what it feels like to have my disability invalidated because I don't look disabled. Alopecia is a valid disability, and it is an autoimmune disease that affects more than just the hair. It's time that we foster inclusion and expand the definition of disability beyond wheelchair, crutches, and canes.
Okay, so there we go. We need to expand the definition. And she's kind of saying the quiet part out loud here was saying, well, we just need to change the definition of a word. It doesn't make any sense. But whatever hoops they have to jump through, whatever mental gymnastics they have to do, however they have to twist themselves into a pretzel to make sure that they are and forever will remain the victim in all situations is just what they're going to do. And they have no shame about it. You almost have to give them credit because there are a bunch of people who won't stand up for anything, won't push back on anything, and then just sit there complaining, kind of like me.
Disability has everything to do with this conversation, and disabilities can come in any form, shape, or size. Jada is not being portrayed as victim, and I think that's being overshadowed by the entire scandal.
Well, she's not the victim. She was literally the architect of the slap because Will was laughing, and then he looked over at her, and then he got up and smacked Chris Rock. And there is a little, and I don't want to speculate too much, but there's a little bit of, I guess, reporting on how this might have something to do with Scientology. Now, I don't know anything about Scientology, but there's something that I saw, I think, on Barstool Sports. So fact check me on this. But if somebody wrongs you or if somebody disrespects you, you can slap them or you're supposed to slap them. And if you don't, somebody higher up in Scientology will slap you. Again, I don't know if there's any truth to that, but nothing's off the table at this point.
I don't think people are demanding an apology from Chris Rock. And to be honest, I think his win, as historic as it is, he's the 5th Black male to have won an Academy Award for Best Actor.
Okay, why would people need an apology from Chris Rock? He's a comedian that told a joke at a show. He shouldn't have to apologize for doing his job. Will Smith should be the one apologizing, and Jada probably should have stopped him. She probably should have said something like, hey, sit down, it wasn't fun, we'll talk to him later. But nope, he got up there, rushed the stage. And in true Kanye fashion, I also think that if they didn't want this to happen, somebody probably could have stopped her. Was there no security there? Because I get the feeling that if I'm in the crowd, I wouldn't have just been able to rush the stage. But again, that's just me.
I think that is overshadowed, and I think we shouldn't focus so much on this one heated moment. We are human beings and we can lend grace to one another. There's a lot of respectability politics going on.
That doesn't mean anything. Respectability politics, these people just make up terms and then expect you to believe them. Respectability politics, what does that mean, lady? Explain that. Maybe she will.
That specifically Black people, that we shouldn't act like this in white spaces, and that
in Black people, you shouldn't be smacking people anywhere. It doesn't matter if it's a quote unquote white space and your respectability politics. This doesn't mean anything. This is just her rambling complete Kamala Harris word salad about why Jada Pinkett is always the victim no matter what, just because she's a Black woman. Even though she's a millionaire and has been in Hollywood for, 3 decades.
Violence is never the answer. But the Oscar stage has been a place where violent men have been celebrated, specifically Harvey Weinstein, Woody Allen, Casey Affleck, Roman Polanski. The difference is that...
Okay, I don't know anything about Casey Affleck, but yes, the rest of those guys are complete scumbags, and it is an example of how terrible and degenerate all of Hollywood is. So yes, she's right on that part. Those guys are awful, and we should probably just cancel the entirety of Hollywood, but I don't know if that's going to happen.
Their violence is done behind closed doors. We shouldn't overlook the greatness that was the most diverse Oscars in history. The presence of deaf actors on stage, major win for Coda, major win for the deaf community. That's being overshadowed. If you care about social justice.
No, I don't care about social justice, because there is no social justice. There's just justice. That's what it is. But when you add those qualifiers, it turns it into absolute nonsense. And that's what we've been dealing with for at least, I think since Occupy Wall Street, maybe 2011, 2012, the advent of Twitter, when everybody just became a victim and they could just tweet at an airline or they could tweet at a restaurant and somebody would think that Twitter is real, even though a very small percentage of I'm not even on Twitter. I have a Twitter account. Maybe you should go follow it at Report and Opine. I don't even post anything there. But the point I'm trying to make is this is all absolute nonsense.
You'll care about what's happening to women like Jada Pinkett Smith.
What's happening? What's happening to women like Jada Pinkett Smith? She's stepping out on her husband and she's the victim for that? My mind is boggled at how they could even form these thoughts, because they're completely irrational, and it just shows that the only thing they want is power.
Who can't exist in the public, be their authentic self without someone joking about their appearance.
It's also hilarious to me that we just heard Ketanji Brown Jackson say that she doesn't even know what a woman is, but here we are talking about Jada Pinkett Smith and how much of a victim she is simply because she is a Black woman. And of course that makes sense, because Ketanji Brown Jackson was nominated only because she's a Black woman, but later went on to say that she doesn't even know what a woman is. So of course, Ketanji, I ask you, what is a Black person? And to this lady from Now This News, I have to ask you, how, in that 3-minute video, how does that have anything to do with white supremacy?